right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get kicked off here this morning. Our guest presenter today is Paul Benner, and he's going to be diving into the Airbnb investing model. And as he's indicated that he's a former realtor, knows how to do his own introductions, doesn't need anything from me, so I'm just getting out of the way.
That's fine, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. I know Andy, by the way, we worked together for about 10 years on various projects. I'm going to just quickly introduce myself. My partner, Vince Severn, he should be here in a couple minutes. My name is Paul Benner. I actually got my real estate license in 2004, my junior year of college. I graduated from BW. That seems like millennia ago. So I guess my current job is I'm the founder of a Platform Beer Company, brewery here in Cleveland. We've been open 7+ years. I sold a business about 2 years ago. Still have a hand in all of the operations. Have a little bit more free time on my hand, and something that I wanted to do is get back into real estate investing. So my past investments in real estate have been kind of a more traditional means of investment. So single families, doubles, and landlord situation, turn them over every year or two, just like, probably all dealt with on the investment side. So I was at a mixer and was introduced to a gentleman that focused on managing Airbnbs. So we all have heard of Airbnb, right? So we're familiar with what an Airbnb it is, but I was very naive in how the operations of one of these properties work, but was really intrigued. So I'm gonna introduce you to, I guess, a little bit of background on how Airbnb investing work. I'll give you a real world example of a property that that are real numbers for this year that I will compare to the traditional model of long-term tenant investing versus Airbnb, and show you the opportunity for incredible returns in a very short period. And then, since you guys are realtors, I'm not going to get too deep into like the basics of this stuff. I have a slide at the end that's like the frequently asked questions that I think you probably are going to ask me anyway that I can answer right away. And then I'll just kind of give you an opportunity to ask like what are some of the things that you want to know about Airbnb and how to sell it for yourself or sell it to your customers. Okay, so first things first, like what is Airbnb? So Airbnb is a peer-to-peer solution leveraged by technology. Airbnb has currently about 4 million hosts worldwide. There are more listings on Airbnb than the top 5 hotel chains in the world combined. This is not just something that is a fad. This is a major player in the travel world. 150 million people worldwide have booked over 800 million stays since Airbnb was invented, or Airbnb was created. It includes listings in over 100,000 cities worldwide. The average occupancy rate of an Airbnb in the US is 48%, which is interesting. And Airbnb constitutes 19% of total demand for lodging in the US. So that means 1 in every 5 bookings for travel in the United States are an Airbnb. 2020 was a rough year for Airbnb, as you can imagine. But 2021 has seen incredible growth and adoption. So there's some stat that I heard a couple months ago that I couldn't find it last night, but it's something to the effect of 30% of all Airbnb bookings in 2020 were people booking Airbnb for the very first time, which is a big deal. And then as we get a little more into the demographics, 36% of all guests in Airbnb are between the age of 25 and 30. So these are the people who, as they continue to develop in their careers, they will continue to have more disposable income, and this is going to be the first choice for those, a continual, I think a growing number of people in that age range will continue to use this as their first means of choice when they're traveling. And then finally, Airbnb is actually a publicly traded company. It was an IPO this year for Airbnb. It's listed on the NASDAQ. So again, Airbnb is a really solid, profitable company. That is the backbone of everything that we do as investors to be able to provide our product to another peer. Any questions about this stuff or just higher level Airbnb as we get going? Nope. Okay, cool. So this is an example of a property that I own, that I went through the process of analyzing whether or not I wanted to do it as a long-term tenant investment or as an Airbnb. So scenario one is long-term tenant. This is a two-family, two-bedroom. So I say two-bedroom plus because this is another interesting opportunity for Airbnb investing. This is a property that had two bedrooms, so closets in two of the rooms, and then a third that had no closet. It was a very small kind of awkward space. Maybe you use it as an office. It'd be a very tiny bedroom, but let's just call it a 2.5 up and down, right? One bath per unit. So in Ohio City, that unit could rent for about $1,100 a month. If I used a property management company, they would charge 10% on that per month, and they would also charge me 10% to place the tenant. Okay, so that after just doing that, that gets me to 1962. What I did for the placement is I just amortized it over 12 months instead of making it a one-time fee. So net on that is 1962 in income that I'm producing a month. Okay, not bad. Down payment on that property would be $42,000, so that's 20% down. I'll talk about financing in a little bit, how Airbnb is actually kind of interesting opportunity. But we'll just call it 20% down. Usually it's 25% for investment. I'm just going to go 20. But either way, it's going to be the same down whether Airbnb or not, right? So our monthly payment on that, so property taxes, insurance, and our P&I, that's going to be about $1,500 a month. And then let's just say 5% for maintenance. So all that distilled down gets us a cash flow of $342. So like I've always kind of read that $300 a month in cash flow is a really, really positive thing. If you can just keep stacking properties that are getting you about $300, there's definitely models out there that use that as the benchmark. And I think that's just. Hey, this is Vince. So personally, in me looking at that, I think that's an absolute shit return. Like to put in $42,000 as a down payment and to get $300 a month is terrible. Obviously, there's some tax incentives for owning property, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, that's like from a cash flow perspective, that's garbage, right? In my opinion. So we rated through the Airbnb model, and we actually didn't do as well as this scenario. This is actually real numbers for so far for the year. The gross income on having the same unit or the same two units rented out via Airbnb has been $4,800 a month. So that is the gross receipts that we're getting in bookings. We pay a management fee of 20%. So our team, we purchase it, we furnish it, and then we have a team that will handle all of the back end booking, motions, customer service, calls, whatever it is, regular maintenance, schedule of cleaning, all the things that scare people about operating Airbnb. We pay somebody 20% to handle. All right, we have no placement fee, obviously, because we're not putting a long-term tenant in there. That distills to a net rental income of $3,840 per month. So just from on the revenue side alone, we are up almost $2,000 versus the long-term tenant. Okay, so the down payment is the same. We're still purchasing the property the same as we would long-term tenant. The one capital cost that we have that we normally wouldn't have on a long-term investment is our furnishings. So for a unit like this would be about $7,000 to furnish it per unit. And this is actually a part that I really enjoy. That at first was a big headache, but now I actually really enjoy the process of curating these properties, giving them all kind of their own unique look and feel. And then you also get really good at like understanding what good deals are, what are unnecessary things, what are like the inexpensive things that you can do to furnish a place that make it really attractive to a traveler. But the monthly payment's the same, right? So you have the same mortgage on it, same taxes and insurance, and then I still build a 5% maintenance charge in there. So after that, as you can see, cash flows of over $2,200 a month on this property. Like that's what I'm looking for. Like I don't want to have my capital tied up making a tiny amount of money, and I didn't even throw in there's 5%, but if you get the thing mowed, that's going to cost you $100 pretty much every month in the summer, snow removal. So there's a lot of things that are included. On Airbnb, on the expense side, I'll get to that in a minute. So this is just straight cash flow, right? So then if we are looking at a return on cash perspective in each scenario, it would take me 122 months to return my initial investment in that property, assuming that I make 342. In scenario 2, it takes me about 2 years. So you look at this, and this is, to me, this is like a no-brainer, right? So there's obviously some things that we'll talk about, like that I have in frequently asked questions that poke some holes in this, but the facts are the facts. This is the return on the cash that you have. Yes.
On your first slide, you mentioned that the average occupancy around the country is 48%. Your scenario 2 was what percentage occupancy for the month?
So this unit usually has somewhere between 85 and 95%.
Okay. And so that's like 27 days a month.
Yeah, I mean, whatever that averages
Okay.
per month. But so we have, this is a unit that we operate 100% as an Airbnb. So I don't have the stats in front of me, but I would almost guarantee that somebody who commits to a property, be it an Airbnb 100% of the time, has it available 365 days a year, is going to have a much higher occupancy than somebody who is living in the place and rents it out every few weeks.
So that's factored into the 48%, right? Would be like if I just rent it out for 2 months while I'm out of town.
Yeah, I assume that number, I'm guaranteed that number is any host. So host, it could be get somebody that rents it out or makes it available 100 days a year, or somebody who makes it available 365 days. So these are committed investment properties from day one. We're not. We've stayed in this one time, just for the hell of it, right? We just wanted to stay downtown. It's his birthday. Did you want to introduce yourself real quick? Yeah. So just so you guys know, this is like not our 100% gig, right? We both have jobs.
Yeah, I'm Vince. Worked all for years now. Pharmacist by day, and that's the rest of the site.
Yep. Okay, so good question. That's a really good question. Anything else about these numbers before I get into like frequently asked questions of Airbnb investing? Yeah, 7,000 a unit. Yeah, so and that's the number that we, over time, we've kind of settled on when we run our numbers. It's about what it costs to furnish a two-night bedroom place.
What's the average length of stay?
It varies. So I could pull that for our properties, but I say we probably have about 10. It turns over about 10 times a month. So that could be somebody staying for 2 nights, which is our minimum, which is something I'll talk about in a little bit. And then we've had bookings for like 3 weeks. But I'd say they're more. Sorry, real quick. They're probably more 3 to 4 days than they are, 2 weeks.
I have a question about your maintenance. So that seems pretty low, just knowing you have to get a cleaner in, like you said, 10 times a month, and other expenses. Like, what about like your reserve funds, and like how much do those cleaners cost, or do you not factor it in because you can bill it back to your client?
It's a good question. I'm going to actually cover that in the next slide. It's a very common question because that's like a scary thing for people. Shit, how am I gonna juggle to get some cleaning person in there? If I have somebody check out at 11, a.m. and somebody's checking in. There. Yes.
Maybe the question was answered. How many nights a month?
So this is 85 to 95% occupancy. Yes. And these are real numbers. So this isn't like hypothetically if it was 85%, these are real. And this is an average over the year. So if you can imagine travel's a little seasonal. December is going to be a slower month for us. January will probably be a slower month for us. But the summer was ridiculous. And also something that's interesting about Airbnb is you can take advantage of events, right? So we can essentially price gouge when the market says that there should be a higher cost per night stay in our area, as opposed to a long-term tenant, you're locked in $1,100 a month. So like, as an example, real quick, the NBA All-Star weekend is in February, which is probably not on many people's radar, but we're seeing bookings for that week 5 to 7 times our normal night stay. So like this, we have a condo downtown, a 1-bedroom condo, typically rents for about $120 a night. We had a booking for the entire week of February at almost $600 a night for that, which is not something you ever could take advantage of as a long-term tenant. Yes.
Your management company helping you determine the shifting pricing for that?
They do everything. So,
Okay.
so they have a service. They use a third-party service that will generate essentially optimal pricing. And they don't book any further out than 3 months. So like we don't want somebody booking for December of 2022 because we don't know what's going to happen in 2022, right? That's something we learned the hard way. We had one of our bookings for the All-Star weekend was booked in like July of 21. And it was we lost the big opportunity. So we learned. Yes. Do you have a question?
I mean, probably wouldn't work for this property, for other properties, like if somebody had, like, you charge more if someone say had a birthday party at a house, or a photographer or something like that, what is it standard rate charge?
I have a question that will probably cover that and even go a little further in depth on like who is booking these places, what kind of properties make sense for Airbnb. But we just on a high level, no, we don't ask you what you're doing. We don't care. Like, we want to make sure you're not having big parties, and there's things that we do to hopefully prevent that, but no, we don't ask necessarily.
I have a question, and I might have missed this before. Where is Airbnb's cut?
Yeah, Airbnb's cut is paid for by the traveler. So our guest will pay a 3% surcharge to Airbnb that is covered by the guest.
So no cost as a host.
You don't see it. Airbnb is a free service for the host. We don't pay anything. There's an insurance, I think that our manager covers. So they pay a small amount to be insured by Airbnb. But that's also something I'll talk about. Because that's what people are worried about. It's like, what happened? I'll get it. Any questions? I don't want to jump. Any questions about the numbers stuff? Anything like you want to poke holes in here?
You're going to talk about ideal units versus the non-ideal units?
Yeah. This is why I have frequently asked questions. Okay. So what type of property, right? These are arguments. Oh yeah, I was going to ask. What type of property would be a good fit? Okay, so let's think about who would book an Airbnb. I think most of us assume that the only people that are booking Airbnbs are people who are traveling downtown to go to the Cavs game, or somebody who's wants to get a condo to have a bachelor party downtown. That's not really the case anymore. Everybody's using Airbnb. Everybody from the bachelor party to the family of 5 that is coming into town to visit grandma, right? However, you still need to be in places where it makes sense for a traveler to travel to, right? So obviously, downtowns are going to be places where a lot of people are going to be wanting to book Airbnbs, right? And that's kind of the no-brainer location. However, we found a lot of success outside of that. In many cases, on a per-unit basis, more success in properties that are outside of downtown. So what do we own right now? We own downtown condos. We're actively looking to buy more. We have a double in Ohio City, which is near downtown, but also in the neighborhood. We have 2 homes in suburban settings in Berea. Okay, like that's on a per unit basis, that's our best performing property. It's a good question. Some people ask me, like, who the hell wants to travel to Berea? Why would they rent an Airbnb? Well, it's a 4-bedroom house, or it's a 3-bedroom house, but it sleeps 8. Okay, it is near the college, it's near the airport, it's near the fairgrounds, and it's near the hospital. So not necessarily a vacation community, right? But when you're thinking about people traveling into town, and in that unit, we're seeing families. There's a lot of families that are, if they're coming into town, instead of renting a hotel, if you have kids, it's horrible staying in a hotel with your kids. Instead, they're actually deciding to stay in a home where kids can run around, you can have separate living spaces, entertaining spaces. Parents get their own bedroom, kids can get their own bedroom. And it's typically cheaper per night than renting a hotel, especially if you have multiple rooms. So, but where would it not be good? It's going to be good in probably the inner city of Cleveland, I would imagine. That's not a place that people are going to travel on a regular basis. It might be tough to be in a rural setting, but even that's changing. Like the highest growth sector of Airbnb right now are more of these remote areas, these vacation communities that are more, I guess, staycation communities, right? Like Hills or Doylestown, Amish country, those type of communities are where Airbnbs grow crazy. But good fit can be anywhere. And we use a software that we paid for per year that we can literally type in any address in our area, so you pay by region. And Airbnb will give us all of the stats of every Airbnb or VRBO that is currently operating. It'll give us their current bookings revenue. It'll also give us their potential revenue if they would have, based on how many nights they have it available. And then it'll also spit out what your expectation range should be on the revenue side, assuming that you have all of these parameters. It's 2-bedroom. It's here's the address. It's furnished in this way. It sleeps X number of people. This is what your expected revenue should be. And in our case so far, in running them through that software, our revenues have actually been a little higher than those. So I feel confident when I throw something through. It's called AirDNA is the service. If I throw a property through AirDNA and it tells me that it's going to generate $42,000 in revenue a year, I feel pretty confident that it's going to generate $42,000. And I feel like I can do things to be on the higher 75 percentile of revenue based on how I furnish it and how we operate. So good fit could be anywhere. I mean, honestly, I think we're thinking way more outside the box than we originally were on Airbnb. Like we're looking at doing communities now that are driving distance from Cleveland that people would use for staycations. On the water, communities like Huron, Sandusky, Center. All right, do you have to furnish the home? Yes. So again, this is something that can be pretty daunting. Yeah. Mistakes that a lot of people make when they're renting their Airbnb, I think if you live there and you rent it out, like nobody wants to see pictures of you and your dog and your grandma and stuff on the walls. Like you want to make it as non-descriptive as possible. Again, we operate them 100% as investments. So like we don't sleep in the beds that our guests sleep in the night before. That's weird. I think it's weird. think it's weird. So you want it to be set up where it feels like a hotel more than it feels like somebody's home. If that makes sense. We do all new furnishings. Rarely will we like have grandma's couch and oh yeah, she's getting rid of that couch. Just throw it in my Airbnb. Like that's not a good way to operate your business. So you want to get, mid-level quality furniture that you get at a good deal, and furnish it in a way where it feels homey, but it doesn't feel like you're living at somebody's house. We'll use services like Airbnb or Wayfair. I get a lot of my stuff from Wayfair. They actually have like credit cards if that's something you need to do, so that you can amortize the cost of your furnishing if that's like an upfront expense that you don't cash for. You do, yeah. So you said, yep, on some items you do. Okay, questions about furnishing? And some of that will be replaced. So as our team, what they do is they come in, they recommend that something needs to be replaced. They'll replace it for us, and then they charge us back.
Why did you try to find like sitting sofa for each of your units, but that's like stylistically curate some of the more interesting features based on downtown versus the Korean home?
Yeah, there's some items that we purchased twice, but I just don't remember what we bought before. I should. But I have a budget. I know it's a good price. I know it's not, and things go up and down. It's not just Wayfair that we use, but I kind of know what I need to pay for a king bed. Like the beds are all the same. The sheets are all the same. So I guess there is some stuff. The beds, the sheets, a lot of the bed frames. We're starting to standardize that. But I like to put cool chairs in some places, not put cool chairs in some places. The rugs are all different in the places. So yeah, they're all listed by the same manager, so you don't want them to look exactly the same. And each house has its own feel, right? So like our downtown condo is going to be decorated much differently than our Berea family. Like in our Berea house, we have a finished basement, and I invested in like an old arcade style video game. So it's a stand-up console. Because I knew there'd be families in there, right? And like that's on almost every single review is the kids love the 600 game old school video console, So that's not something I would do in the downtown. Any more questions about furnishings? No. It's not as daunting as the first one was kind of tough. We went way overboard with it, with like knickknacks and stuff. Now it's like it's more streamlined. It becomes kind of fun. Okay, what if you don't want to manage the Airbnb? And that's something I've covered, a bunch of questions have that. So like, what does the manager do? The manager does everything. I mean, honestly, like we fix it up. We'll use like the BRRRR approach on some of our properties, but we don't rent it. We Airbnb it. So there's probably some acronyms like the BRRRR, like that, right? And once we get the place furnished, we turn it over to them. So we pay $500 for a startup fee, and then that pays for our professional photography photos. Our host is a super host on Airbnb, which is a big deal. That's typically what people will, if they use Airbnb a lot, they'll filter by super host. Super host is somebody who's has a lot of listings, has been doing it for a while, has good reviews. It's essentially somebody that can be trusted in the Airbnb. And then they send us a report every single month. So that report will tell us what were the bookings, what's the revenue, what's their cut, what are the outstanding, or what's some of the, non-regular expenses, like a bed broke, they have to replace the bed. If it's over a certain threshold, they don't tell us, they just do it. And then they ACH us a payment. We're in touch with our managers on a very regular basis, but as far as like customer interactions, we never talk to them. I'm not a host. I'm the owner of the building. If you want to host, if you wanted to host your own Airbnb, first I would say you're crazy. That sounds delusional. They are. Yep. So if your name, your nothing is on Airbnb that says Paul Benner. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole other business for Airbnb hosting, which is it's a cool business too, because you don't have to own anything. Essentially just providing a service. You just leverage the asset that I own to make you 20%, right? All you're doing is the nuts and bolts of customer service. I don't want to do that. I never want to do that. I like this. Like, if tenants don't call me, then I don't hear from anyone. Is it a full-time job? It's definitely not a full-time job. And most of the work is up front. You get it furnished, get it fixed up, and then you turn it over to your managers and that checks, right? That's the idea. It's very passive, like more passive than turning a tenant over once a year, going in there and spending $1,000 cleaning up your shit. Okay, what if they trash my house? It's a really good question. It's one of the biggest concerns of Airbnb. Guess what? They pay for it. A guest comes in, they punch a hole in your wall, they're charged by Airbnb. Airbnb pays you that. This is like the insurance that our hosts pay. But like host or a guest is not off the hook if they smash a mirror in your bath. They pay for that. Like your tenant would pay for that. You know, you may have a security deposit that you give back to them, but like it's paid for, and those disputes are typically handled in a matter of days, and then we get it fixed. That's it.
What's your limit on that? Or did you
I don't know.
25,000 versus now?
I would imagine that I don't know. I'm not going to answer that question. I mean, so you obviously as a homeowner, we have insurance on the property. Something crazy we're having.
Something more like what they walked off with.
Yeah, no, that would be disputed. Yeah, if they stole your couch, then they have to pay for your couch.
I actually, so there's a woman in this office who has her son's friend had an Airbnb in Colorado, and a guy stayed there in his U-Haul truck, like moving from wherever he was moving to like Missouri or something, and he's staying in this Airbnb, and the day he leaves, he takes his stuff out of the U-Haul, puts it in the house, takes it out of the U-Haul. And then actually happened.
Interesting.
So who would step in, Airbnb or the
Yeah.
management company?
Well, the management company would notify Airbnb of the damage or of the furniture completely being stolen. And then there would be a case created. Airbnb would be in contact with the guest, and the guest has a card on file with Airbnb, and they can be charged.
So it's just like a hotel. They have a
Yeah.
card on file.
And the other thing is, like, so this is, you know, this new economy of like peer reviewing, right? If a host fucks up on an Airbnb, they're banned from Airbnb. So like that service can be removed. Like you're not allowed on here. Like I rate you, you rate me. So as much as like they're saying we loved your place, it's clean, I'd come back here again. If you are a shitty guest, I can say you're a shitty guest. And we can see that when you're ready to book our place. We'll look at your history. And this is something when, the parties thing I was going to cover. So if somebody requests to book we don't do instant booking. You can make that an option, instant booking, where somebody at any point can say, I want to book February 3rd, and it happens. We don't do that. So you have to request February 3rd. Our managers then can look at your profile, ask you follow-up questions, and then say, no, we're good.
Are you growing up in an Uber?
Exactly.
Is that true, Alice?
Alice doesn't.
It's the same idea. So it's checks and balances. It keeps the guest honest, and because they know I'm going to review you, and as your status goes down, it's gonna be harder for you to rent, right? So yes, there is a process in place to make sure that if it's trashed, there's reimbursement for the damages. That's happened on quite a few occasions. None of them have been major, by the way, like nothing crazy, like holes in walls, broken furniture. Like they break a mirror, even though it's our mirror, they pay for it, right? So I get a brand new one. Is an Airbnb just for people looking to party? No. Are there people that party in Airbnbs? Sure. So what are some of the things that we do to try and mitigate that? Well, first off, you have to book it for 2 nights. So some hosts will allow somebody to book a single night stay. We also don't allow people to book our Airbnb that are from Cleveland. Okay. We've done it a few times, but our host will ask a lot of questions of that person. They'll look into their past reviews to make sure that it's not just somebody locally here looking to have a party spot. Okay. The other thing is we will not book to somebody who doesn't have more than 2 reviews. So let's just say that somebody wants to throw a huge rager and they want to do it on a Saturday night. They're like, yeah, let's get an Airbnb. So they just create an Airbnb listing. They do an instant book. This is a scenario that this is why Airbnb has a poor reputation at party. I'll just go through that again. Somebody has a place, a guest creates an account that week. They instantly book for Saturday night, February 3rd. They have no reviews, and that host doesn't ask them any questions. And they live in Cleveland. Like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, what are the chances of that not working out well? Pretty high, right? So these are some simple things that you can do, some parameters that you put in place to prevent situations where people come, have huge parties, the cops are called, the neighbors are pissed, places destroyed. And by doing those simple things, we've not had any issues with parties.
So do you, when people looking to book your places, recognize that they're being booked through this filtering?
Oh yeah, it's direct messaging. So once they request, it's a message. So we ask them, why are you staying? Why do you want to book our place? They're coming into town, blah, blah, blah. If it says they're from Cleveland, okay, you can't fake that when you sign up an Airbnb account. You can't fake where you're from. It says you're from Cleveland, you have no reviews. We can look at that and say, what are you doing here? Why are you trying to get our place for 2 nights? Typically don't rent to people who are in town. Why do you not have any reviews? And so that's, I'm sorry, but you're going to rent somebody else's place. If you're new to Airbnb, sorry. It's just the way it is. You're local, you have no reviews, you're not renting our place. Somebody would probably let you, somebody who's not a super host, somebody who doesn't have these parameters, and then they're going to have a bad experience. They're going to hate Airbnb. They're not going to be a host anymore, and I'm going to get those customers. So you operate like a business, and it's have better results. Yes.
Is it generally a red flag if somebody's trying to rent a place like now?
No.
Is there an assumption that there's some problem there?
No, because we'll get last minute bookings. We'll get same week bookings. The things that we look out for are: is it a local booking? Is it less than 2 nights? Which we won't even allow you to request for less than 2 nights. And do they have previous reviews? Those 3 things. That's what we're serving. Yeah, we vet them. Better experience. Okay, is it hard to finance? It's kind of hard to finance. Not a lot of banks are familiar with Airbnb. They like to see a lease. They see a lease and they're like, okay, that's solid. Even though my cash flow destroys what I could get on a lease, and I can prove it because I have financials to prove it, banks like to see a lease. So I've found that it's hard to work with big national, big regional banks. So you kind of have to work with local ones. You can use traditional financing. I think you can have up to 4 mortgages personally. And You don't have to say it's being used as an Airbnb when you get the loan. Who cares, right? As long as you can get approved personally. But what we do is we use commercial loans. So commercial loans, because it's under a business entity, it's ran as a business, they're typically gonna be a little higher. So right now, like 4% is what I'm getting. And those are 20-year amortized loans. So I have to refinance it for 5 years. Pay that every 5 years. It's a little more work. I own commercial real estate. If some of you own commercial, you understand that process is a little different than a standard mortgage. But this allows me to buy 500 Airbnbs. Not worry about how many personal mortgages I have. Yeah.
Kind of along the same line.
Yeah.
Maybe why it's. You're buying so thin on term. You can also talk about saturation market. Radar at all.
I don't know. As long as my returns are what they are, I'm happy with that. And this is, to me, it's like I'm dumping my money in an asset that, like, first off, is giving me a ton of cash every month. And I also get the advantage of all of the other reasons why you want to invest in real estate for the long term: tax advantages, appreciation, all of that. So to me, even if like my margins are half of what they were, which I think is a stretch, because I think we operate them in a way where I'm going to always stay in the 75th percentile of the market, I'm still getting awesome returns compared to what I could get in almost any other asset right now. So to me, it's twofold. Like, this is a store of value typically, like long-term real estate. I think it's a store of value. You get a little bit of cash flow from it. I'm getting both. I'm getting the store of value, but also getting insurance value. So saturation, I don't know. I think that there will probably be more people that maybe try Airbnb, like they heard that they can make more money with the place. That's fine. I think there'll be more professional services that are available to people who want to be Airbnb investors. Like that.
Is there anything in it? So you have the management company that manages it. Is there like another potential cottage industry around Airbnbs? Like, is it furnishing? Like, what's another place where you could stand up an entire business just serving people like you?
I mean, personally, the management side of me is a really, really fascinating business because, again, it's like there's zero barrier. There's no cash outflow from the beginning. I mean, you are a host. It doesn't cost you anything to be on Airbnb. All you have to find is people who have supply available that typically aren't using it. Like, I know Andrew and I have talked about, he's got a place in Clifton that, like, if you're not getting the type of long-term rents that you want, this is where, me as if I was a property manager, I approach that person or I contact and say, why don't you furnish that, invest $5,000 in that and let me manage it for you. And if you have some properties of your own you can start managing, then you all of a sudden can, keep layering these 20% fees on top of each other. And that's a business where there's essentially no starter fees. I think it's really fascinating, and there's not a lot of quality managers right now in our area. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting business. Furnishing, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know if the supply's there yet.
As a surcharge, yeah, furnishing.
No doubt.
Like turnkey, yeah.
Hiring somebody out, like, I got somebody from, it's like, he's not making any money off of it.
Right.
So, she's just doing it.
Yeah. There's national services that do this, and they charge some of them charge 5%, but then they mark up every disposable, right? So bar of soap,
yep.
They buy in bulk, they get it for $1.20, they charge you $2.25. Somebody messes a towel up, cost them $1.05 to get that towel, they charge you $4. So that's another model where you get people for smaller amounts. So then there's incentive for that person to try and get cheaper.
maybe a little bit more on the management side of things, so you might not have an answer. But I took a call from an agent this morning who has short-term rentals that are focused on traveling nurses. Like, do you see like any capacity around like just the hospital network that we have here, and like this being a version of that?
I don't know. Is it the elusive traveling nurses? Everybody wants to tap into that line.
I don't know how you would target a certain person. I don't know how you would do that.
Yeah.
I think maybe if you had it in,
Mhm.
you know, with the universities or hospitals where somebody, travel nurse comes in, here's the places that we identified that can stay. But quite frankly, we don't have a problem using people in our places. If you furnish it well, you have super host status, you're getting good reviews as a host, your place is getting good reviews. It's kind of like, because it's being peer reviewed, it goes up to like the top of, just use Google as an analogy, like it goes to the top of the Google search. Right, so if I have a place that's 4.93 stars and it's been reviewed 150 times, like there is a lot of value to those reviews. My place versus a place that's been reviewed 25, if it's similar cost, like where are you gonna stay? Like it's over time it starts getting easier and easier. What's that?
Those who stay with the property.
They stay with the property, and then the manager has, let's say our manager has 30 properties. If he's getting 200 reviews per property, then he's got 600 reviews, right? So you feel confident that super host is going to take care of your experience. So it's like the longer these things are in operation, the longer they're available to book, the more valuable, in my opinion, they're going to be. Like I could see the next wave 5 years from now, people like me who want to get into this would buy that piece of real estate as a business with buying with valuations based on what their income and their profit are, as opposed to what the market value is of that property. Because the reviews will go with the property, even if a new manager is managing. That makes sense? So there's a lot of, I think, enterprise value in this book that we're generating. Yeah, that's definitely a threat, I would say, to the industry in general, is regulation. So some municipalities don't want short-term rentals, some do. The term short-term rental is one that used to mean something very different 10 years ago. Okay, so there are municipalities that have rules against short-term rentals because they didn't want like pay by the hour motels, right? I mean, who the hell wants that? So these laws are in place to prevent things like that, not to prevent Airbnb. So is there a need or is there a demand to like create new laws in some municipalities to allow for Airbnb? I don't know. I know in Cleveland, it's not something that, and it's not a high priority to prevent people from. So there are some large, like out west, like Seattle, I'm sure, like Airbnbs. Shaker, yeah, Rocky River, you can have Airbnbs, but
I know people that live in
yeah, I mean, what's the enforcement? Like, who's the agency that's going to enforce it? The building department? I mean, realtors, right? You think the building department's going to go knocking on Airbnb doors? So yes, that is a threat, though. If there were like wholesale bans, like right, across the board, that would be. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess worst case scenario, you just go back to getting your 1%, right, or your $300 a month.
Or sell them. Hopefully they appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bad apples are the the shitty, I mean, honestly, it's like the shitty hosts, right? The shitty hosts are the ones that are going to cause issues for the industry. You know, if somebody has a bad experience as a host and they drop out, that's good for me. That means I'm a stronger host because there's less supply. I think it can be a challenge. I think it's a challenge. I think it's something that there's a hole in the market. Like,
But you don't wanna do that.
if I was
You want
22,
the company to do that.
if I was 22, yeah, if I was 22, I would start this business. I would be an Airbnb host. That's what I would do. Yeah, well, I'm not 22. I like to be on the other side, but yes.
Question. What's like from your experience, what's the max that you would let somebody stay?
I think the max is the one. I think.
But that's what you would want.
But you can set those parameters to be whatever.
Right, but from your experience, like, would you say the longer they stay, the worse the experience would become?
I could see that, right? Also, like, we give discounts for weekly rental, we give discounts for monthly. So if I think I'm gonna get, like, let's say December, somebody were to say, I want to rent for December, people would be more likely to say yes.
Yeah.
Say January, February, but like May, no way. Like, we're gonna make way more on like short term rentals than we are.
You build it discounts too, right? You can choose to say, stay for 2 months, but this is the price.
Right.
There's just no discount.
Yep, and again, it's not instant booking, so I can ask them a bunch of questions like, who are you, why are you here? You know, maybe they're an investor that's in town for 2 months to do some special stuff. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. But if you're John from Akron and you want to rent my place for 2 months, like, what's up, John? Yes.
Is it challenging to get insurance?
We had to have our agent, you know, we had to get creative, right? So we had to find some places that were okay with it. And now we have insurance, an agency that is good with it. So we just use them for everything. Keystone is who we do most of our stuff with.
And what about commercial
Great question.
I'm surprised, like, would an insurance agent ask? Like, if it's a rental, it's a rental. Like, I've never been asked any question beyond, like, how do you rent it?
Well, so we didn't at first, and then we had our agent, my broker who I've been using for years, realized that it was, and he just did like his own digging around with the policy that we had, and he's like, I think the policy actually does not allow short. So I'm gonna get you hooked up with an insurance company that I know allows it, so that we just don't have issues. Like if we were to have some big issue and like, oh, we don't cover these, so sorry. Right. I'm not aware of any max.
Was that from an Airbnb side of things?
Interesting. Yeah, I think maybe those more like tourist cities, like cities, they want to support the hotel industry as well. Yeah, we'll make care.
What's the name of your man?
Not really. No, I love you. But this is why I think that there's a big opportunity, because like they're not taking on new customers unless it's like a certain revenue generating.
Right.
Which is interesting. So they're even like dropping some of their current customers. It's like you're not worth their time.
Yeah. So they're top grading their clients just
Yeah.
like anybody else would.
Well, they are, but they just, for them, it's like it takes the exact amount of time to manage a place that, after their 20% cut makes them $300 as it does that makes them $900. So like they just want to take on good stuff. The company's supposed to grow. I don't care either.
Are they not? Are they an international company?
No, they're regional.
Okay.
Again, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you have 22-year-old, enterprising young man or woman that wants to start a business. Like, this is a great business to be in. I think it's an awesome business to be in because there's just no barriers to entry. You just need to find people who are investors and convince your, rich uncle or rich aunt to turn 3 of their rental properties into an Airbnb and see what happens.
Are there any resources for finding reviews from management companies?
I don't know if there's like a list of them. I think what you would do is go on Airbnb, look in the area that you think you want to buy a place, click on the host, see how many listings they have, see what some of the reviews are. If they have 5, 6, 7+ listings, then it might be somebody who is interested in taking more. But I don't think there's like a list.
So you can click on a host and find out what their rental history for that property is.
You can't see their the dollars and cents of that property. But you can see what other listings they have, what are their reviews, what are their ratings, what are people said about them. And you go from there. But somebody who has half a dozen listings is probably doing it almost full time. Great. What do you guys think? Buyer reviews tomorrow?
Yeah.
I love the business. I think it's I'm in a business that's ahead of the curve here that will continue to grow. So the kind of industries I like to be in, and I love the hands-off approach that it gets, that I get from operating these things. I just think they're fun up. So I have boxes in my truck today that I'm going to go to this Korea house that we're going to get furnished and get it live next week. We're doing one of those every 2 months.
It's awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I'll give you my number if anybody wants to text or something. Sorry, you can give me a applause. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So our email is real simple. It's Pasco Hoys. Pasco is our company. And Pasco Hoys, if you ever have any questions for the strategy at Gmail. So, I mean, at AOL.com.
Straight out of your credit bill.
I know, right?
Anything we can do for you, real estate?
Right now, we're looking at downtown. So I'd like. Market for new agents. Anybody just taking? So I'd like to find a really strong commercial partner that so I feel like how do I say this nicely? Commercial bankers don't want to mess with $190,000. They want $5,000. So follow-up isn't the best for what I'm doing. So I'd love a local partner that can do not owner-occupied commercial stuff, which is good. So if you have a good, I'm in the market for that right now. Commercial bank that can do it. Not everything can. Yeah, what do you got? What company? I like banks, but I've never heard of them. That's usually a good sign. Take a little nervous.
Do you think walkability is important in your urban properties?
I mean, okay, so the question I would ask you, if you were going to visit Cincinnati and you were going to hang out downtown, where would you go? A place that is awful. So I mean, the answer is really easy. Where would you stay if you went? Depending on what reason it was for. It's to be entertained. You want to be downtown in a condo where there's stuff around. So it's almost like downtown is like a no-brainer. Anywhere downtown, as long as there's some stuff. The harder ones are like the suburbs. To recognize why would a house generate $50,000. always ask me who the hell stays there. A lot of people stay there. But the downtown, that's what we'll look for downtown, and then we'll branch out into the lake. Well, guys, thanks for having me. If you learned something, again, follow up with me if you'd like. Yes. Sure. So we bought our first Airbnb in May of, let's see, it went operational September. So we're about to put our 6th unit up next week. We have an offer in on another unit. Hope to be operational in January, or end of January. So. Yeah, every 2 months is kind of the thing. We took a little break in the summer. But I think Vince and I would like to have, we'd like to see 20,000 cash. That's so we figured we got 2 more years.
And how much did you say it typically costs?
Yeah, I would say on average for a 2-bed, a little, maybe around 10 for a 3-bedroom. But we've gotten really good at that. We definitely overpaid our first. That just depends. That depends on the property. Yeah. No, it'd be, to me, like those numbers, it'd be this, I'd have to renovate it to lease it out. I'd renovate it to the same point as so I need to do that. But the idea is like, you add some equity by renovating it, and then your cash flow. You refi one of them, and you'll have a lot of cash. You always get the same opportunities as you do long term. Okay. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate you.